Hey, and we are back. Creative coffee break. There's coffee. And my name is Vander Puchert. I'm a creative entrepreneur, and I like to have conversations with interesting people to learn more, to create actionable solutions and do things that we can actually implement and change the world because I think we should. And talking about changing the world, um, people sometimes ask me as a South African, how does it feel living in Poland? So here's a description of what happened in Poland the last couple of days, or I think it was yesterday. So a bunch of people saw something in a tree and they were really stressed out about it, like what's going on? And they called the police. They were closing their windows. And then when the police came, they saw it was a croissant stuck in a tree. So that is definitely how we roll here in Poland. And I love every second of it. But my name is Vander Puchert, like I mentioned, and I do a lot of these live streams. So I want to invite you, if you are keen to be notified or know who's going to come up next or when videos are going out or perhaps extra bonus content, please go to this URL, creativecoffeebreak.live. You know, when someone registers a domain name aligned with a show, you know it's going to get serious, right? So join my mailing list and jump on there. And then also there's bonus content, all kinds of things coming your way. No spam, I promise. You can trust me. I'm South African. Then today, I'm super excited. This is a guy that I actually wanted to get on the show really early on, but I made myself a promise. Before I bring in on an author, I'm going to actually read his book. And I'm super happy that I did. Zero in Formula. And my guest today is Dennis Geelen. And Dennis is the founder and principal of his own consultancy called Zero In. But behind him, he's got about 20 years of experience helping companies and industries grow and prosper. And then he's got a strong background in strategic and innovation and customer experience. But the one thing that I like about him and what he focuses on a lot is he helps people discover, see the light. And this is what comes out in the book that he wrote, The Zero In Formula. It's like, how do you create companies that customers love, brands that customers love? And then, of course, also, that's one thing, but you also want to create a company where people are passionate about the work they do in the company and about the company. So that is really what he's focusing on. And then also, he's a busy man. He's doing a lot of his own content, webinars. He's got a lot of innovation tools. We're going to touch on some of them today because, you know, I feel about a good innovation tool. And then also, you'll catch him in various workshops. And then we'll mention a bit later, he also has a nice training workshop related to the Zero In Formula just recently. In fact, I thought it went live yesterday, but we'll get into that. And without further ado, Dennis, I want to call you on screen here, sir. Thank you very much for joining me. Yeah, and having coffee. Cheers.
Yes, cheers.
So,
Thanks so much for having me on, Werner.
so Dennis, I did a terrible job as usual to introduce you. I also forgot to mention that you are now probably the 100th Canadian on my show. So maybe just a little bit about your history and where you come from, because I know in the book also you spoke about some of the stuff because you were permanently employed at some stage, right?
Yeah, so I am Canadian. Geelen, though, is a Dutch name. My dad was born in Holland, but moved to Canada early on. I've lived my whole life here and still trying to adjust to the Canadian winters. That's not an easy thing to do. Every time winter rolls around every year, I'm like, again? But yeah, as you said, my background originally, I worked for a few different major corporations. I started off in software, actually. I was a software developer. That was
Interesting.
my degree. Yeah, moved into management roles, a lot more into strategy, professional services, really understanding our customers. So that's what I've brought with me now into Zero In.
Awesome. And then talking about Zero In, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here, because I mean, we'll get into some of the questions soon, but Zero In Formula, can you just touch on some of the high-level themes in the book? What is it about? What
Sure.
the dust cover kind of overview of what's
Yeah,
inside.
yeah. Sure. Well, I guess the first major theme is that I strongly believe the main challenge that all businesses need to be focused on is indifference. Either indifferent customers where you just blend in, you're just any option on the market. How do you fix that? Or you have indifferent employees where they don't love or hate their job, it's just a job. Well, if you have either of those two things going on, you got a major problem. So
Exactly.
I believe the main fix to that is to build a customer-centric and innovative company. And those are two huge buzzwords, and we hear a lot about that. But hopefully in the book, I try and dive down to the meat of what does it really mean to be a customer-centric company? And what does it really mean to be an innovative company? And then how do you do that for your own company?
And then is the thing that because when I started reading through it, one of the things that I did pick up, and we did speak about this before, and I felt a little bit embarrassed, or I still feel embarrassed mentioning it, but I've been doing a lot of work in the innovation space, right? And this is not a boast. It's like, like companies are talking about innovation all the time, and because innovation in itself is also human centric to an extent, I never really thought about the connection between innovation and customer experience. I thought it was kind of a given. But in your book, you really, like, you can see that you are bringing the two separate entities together. Do you want to riff a little bit on that? Because I think there might be a few misperceptions. People might go, yeah, we know this, but I don't think that's entirely true.
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting on a great point there. And again, it's a major theme or buzzword to have human-centered or customer-centered innovation. And if you even look at a process like design thinking, yes,
Yeah.
that first step is empathy. But is this just a one-time, let's just get through this so we can get on to the fun stuff of innovation, right? And I believe that's how too many businesses or leaders maybe approach it is, yeah. Let's do a little bit of empathizing so now we can dig in and really innovate. Whereas I believe it needs to be way more than that. There's some foundational pieces and structures you need to put into your company at the core to make sure that you truly are customer centric, not just one time, not as a check box as, hey, we did that first step of design thinking, but this is what we do. We know who our customers are, and we're constantly in touch with why they buy products or services, and it evolves, and we evolve with it. And that's why we're able to innovate and create such an amazing customer experience.
Awesome. And then just hanging on to that customer experience thing, when I heard you speak recently, you actually caught me off guard. You threw a little bit of a curveball because, I mean, we all understand that, customers love certain companies, certain organizations, certain brands. We just love them for what they do. They can do no wrong. But then at some stage you asked, okay, cool, what is the opposite of that? And then I went, yeah, it must be hate. And then you mentioned the word that you actually mentioned in the introduction, also what you cover in the book was indifference.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like just talk a little bit about, how bad this indifference thing is and what does it mean to be indifferent to a brand?
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head that most people just kind of, when you hear, well, what's the opposite of hate? Well, or love, it's hate. They're very strong emotions, right? Although love is a strong positive emotion, hate is a very strong negative emotion. I believe the worst possible place a business could be in is when somebody has no strong emotion towards you and your brand or your products or your services. They're completely indifferent, right? If there's no
Correct.
compelling reason for them to buy from you instead of your competitors, oh boy, you're in a big problem now because in order to win those customers, you probably have to compete on price. And that's a terrible place to be in because now you're constantly slashing prices, you're slashing profits. And by the way, somebody else is still going to find a cheaper way to do it. So this is what you've relegated yourself to. And that's not what you want to be known for. You want to be known for there's some bigger picture, there's some bigger reason, there's some compelling thing that draws customers to your company and your products or services.
Super interesting. And then the thing is, I mean, we didn't really talk about, and I'm just shooting from the hip here with this one, is that because I recently had a conversation with a good colleague of mine who is actually working on a lot of customer experience stuff. And one of the things that she's trying to do in her space is, there's a focus in her company around really to try and solve the problems of the people who complain the most. But what she said to me is
Mm,
that what happens is that they're so busy fixing these small little issues and trying to solve the problems of the grumpy people that they actually forgot about the people that are actually happy. And I feel like maybe there is a disconnect in the sense of like focusing on the people who are really like stoked about your brand and then bringing in
Hmm.
that kind of innovation piece to serve them even better. Or am I
Yeah.
misplacing that a little bit?
No, I think it's a huge um, disservice to your company and your customers if you only are focusing on the bottom 10, 20%, either customers or employees, right? It's who are we resonating with and why, and really understanding that and really putting your focus there. And then is there a group of people that are indifferent? And why is that? Is there something that's missing? Is there something we can tweak? But if the majority of your focus is on that bottom 10, 20%, I think you're missing the mark.
Yeah, correct. And then the other thing that I wanted to chat a little bit about, and this probably falls a little bit more in the customer experience side of things, because the other thing that I got out of the book, and I actually recently royally stole it from your book and used it for my own devices, is, and I think this is something that has already existed, but I never really latched onto it. Is around customer, you know, customer satisfaction as the first layer, and then you go into
Mm.
loyalty, and then in the book you speak about goodwill. But the funny thing is, when I was like focusing on the digital side, and I think maybe because I think it was the old McKinsey model, they flip over into brand advocacy or repurchase or that kind of stuff. I mean, it probably aligns in a way with goodwill, but I've never really played with this goodwill thing. Can you
Yeah, yeah.
explain a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. Before I wrote the book, I was learning a lot, doing a lot of research, and connecting with a lot of different people in the customer centricity and innovation space. And one of the people I connected with, a very interesting guy named Dr. Olaf Hermans, and he does all kinds of research in human relations, and specifically towards businesses and brands. And what he has found is that if you invite people in, not just, hey, are you satisfied with our products or services, or hey, did we do a good enough job, but really invite them in on the journey. Hey, what should we do next? Hey, what are your, where else could we go? How else could we serve? Now you create this affinity or this goodwill where they almost feel attached to your brand. Like, I'm part of that. I help them get there because they asked for my input. Now, obviously, you can't make everybody happy and you can't take everybody's input, but just
Exactly.
inviting them into the process makes them feel valued, right? So at the very, very bottom level, you've got customer satisfaction, right? And this is what I think a lot of companies up until, maybe the last 10 years or so, that's what they were measuring. Are you satisfied? I mean, I don't know about you, Werner, but if I turned to my partner and said, "Hey, honey, it's been a while since we've, had a real intimate talk. How's everything going for you?" And if she looked at me and said, "Yeah, I'm satisfied,"
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
yeah,
think that would be a very good, measure for our relationship.
yeah.
But that's what companies were measuring. We're just satisfying you, right? So beyond that, how do we really get your loyalty? How do we really make you feel like, we're your brand? And then the step beyond that is how do we really invite you in and make you feel like you're connected with our brand? And we've created some goodwill there. So yeah, there's a chapter in the book where I kind of go through that process and what is that hierarchy. And I know for me, when I was talking about that with Dr. Olaf Hermans, it really, a lot of light bulbs started going off in my head. And I thought, geez, I have to include that in a chapter in the book.
Definitely on point, because the reason I stole your or stole the thing out of your book is that, and I had this aha moment because a couple of years ago I actually did a talk about it where I had a website and I lost the domain name of the website. That felt like that was actually the brand of the website. It went
Mm.
poof. Long story. And then I was really worried about it. But then at some stage, someone said to me, "Just change the damn name, man." And I changed the name, and I didn't lose one customer or user on my platform. And when I read this, I went, damn it, like that is definitely goodwill kicking in. And it was not necessarily that
Hmm.
they all loved me and thought Vanna's little business is the best, but I think there was an affinity to what I was doing.
Right.
So it was really a keen moment, and also something interesting I think we should be focusing on as a business, especially also probably for entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And then,
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of relationships and inviting people into the process. It's huge.
yeah, you have to go out and shake hands and kiss babies. Maybe
That's
not
right.
now, not now, but,
Yeah,
get your vaccine.
exactly. That's right. First
Cool.
things first.
Yeah, and Dennis, I mean, I know you have got some practical stuff to share with us in a second or two, right? But there's something else I wanted to ask you, because in the book you also talk about purpose and figuring out what the purpose is, and I found that a lot of the examples that you used in the book really focused on helping organizations kind of like rediscover their purpose, or at least, I think you mentioned somewhere where you helped someone actually find a purpose. But before I ask my question, do you want to mention a little bit what is the importance of purpose?
Yeah. To me, it's the utmost importance. This should be the number one priority of any business, is knowing and understanding and communicating and living the purpose. And your purpose should be outward focused. I think too many businesses fall into the trap of they don't really have a clear purpose, or people within the organization over time don't know what it is, or it's not communicated on a regular basis, or they have one, but it's completely internal focused. We're all about our product. We're all about how we solve problems. Where I believe if you really want to thrive long term, it needs to be about who are we solving problems for and why. So really understanding that and getting that at your core and living that out needs to be the number one priority within your company, and then everything else can fall into place from there.
Makes sense. And now my question, when I read that chapter, is that as an entrepreneur reading that, I went, oh. And also, I have a bunch of colleagues also, and I had a client recently who works in the startup space. And some of the startup people that I meet, they can quickly geek out a lot around the technology or something new that they found, or in their heart they believe that they're doing something right. And sometimes they are right. I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I was thinking, reading that, like, okay, so if I have this bright idea, can I still, like, do I need to look at purpose first? Can I do it in conjunction? Like, how would you, what advice do you have for an entrepreneur
Yeah,
or a startup?
it can be a tough one. I mean, you look at James Dyson as an example. He did not go out and say, I'm going to canvass all these different people that use vacuums and find out what they want. He said, I know what's wrong with the vacuum cleaner. A, they've got bags, and that's a pain. And B, the
Yeah.
way that they create the suction is not very good technology. So instead of the outside in, he did the inside out model. Now, he himself knew very intimately that this was needed and that this was going to add value, and this was something that everybody, was going to eventually catch on to. I think the problem with what some people have is, I'm going to work on something that I think is neat or cool, and eventually people will buy it. And if there isn't really a true need for it, if there really isn't adding value, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it is a bit of a slippery slope when you're starting off, outside in versus inside out. But if you truly base this on, there's a real need for this and I'm solving a problem, you're probably okay.
Excellent. And Dennis, I want to kind of lead us towards some practical stuff. But as you mentioned, I mean, the book is quite broad. There's a lot of things that kind of focus on the innovation side and customer experience, and then how they get together. And there's all kinds of levels to it. So, and you kind of go through it step by step. But is there some immediate things that we can look at, or at least as start implementing today that kind of makes sense?
Yeah.
That is
Yep.
practical.
For sure. Yeah. Obviously, we can't go through the entire formula of the book in the format today. It's really for how do you build that into your business. But what we can kind of talk about today is, well, what are some steps? If you already have a business, if you've already got a purpose and direction, what are some intentional things that you can do? Because yes, it doesn't happen by accident. What are some intentional things that you can do to make sure that you are really resonating with your customers and building that company that people love to work for. So as you can see here, there's a 4-step process I like to work through if I'm working with an established company. So first, and here we're not talking about your why. Now we're talking about your customer's why. Why do customers buy your product or service? And a lot of times it's not as clear as you think, right? There's the obvious answer, right? Why did I go out and buy a suit today? Well, I wanted a new suit. Sure, but why did I want a new suit? Well, maybe I've got a big interview tomorrow
or
and I
a
really
wedding or something. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure, I needed an image, right? Or why did I buy that DVD player to put in the back of the vehicle? Well, it's to keep my kids entertained. Well, why did I want to keep my kids entertained? Because I wanted peace and quiet while I'm driving, right? So when you really start to uncover these whys for your customers, it opens up new ideas. Well, if really what you're looking for is peace and quiet, what else can we do? Or how do we make sure that DVD player isn't going to require you to constantly have to switch the DVD or whatever? Like, can you make it so that the child itself can, put a movie on and not have to bug mom or dad, right? So it opens up a lot of more understanding about your customers.
It's kind of like that Ford example of like people would just want to have a faster horse, right? So if you really understand what it is, you can reframe it and then solve the actual problem. And that's where that little innovation thing hides away from time to time.
Right. So the best way of getting to this is a methodology that has kind of evolved over the last few years called jobs to be done. And really, it's not going out and asking your customer, hey, what do you want? There's some very specific interview styles and ways that you ask questions to really dive into what led you to actually buying this product or service, and you uncover what were the jobs that they were hiring your product or service to do for them. And then once you've got that, maybe there's a few different whys. Maybe there's a few different jobs that people were hiring your product or service to do for them. So do you have some different customer segments? Are there some very different groups here that are purchasing your product or service? And here you got to be a little bit careful. You don't want to create segments if you don't have to, right? It could be that, no, anybody could have this need. So, there has been this whole industry over the last 10, 15 years of designing the perfect customer persona or the avatar that would, well, it depends on your product or service. Maybe you don't have that or don't need that, right? Understanding the why is most important. But if you do have some different distinct segments, understand who they are and what their different needs are. And then once you have that, what's the journey that these different segments or your customer base in general have with your company right now? Map that out and understand it. What are the different phases they go through, from understanding who you are, to looking at your products or service, to buying your products or service, to using your products and service, to being supported in their What are those phases? What are the touch points? What are the different departments within your company that are involved, and so on? Map that journey out, and it's going to reveal to you, this is what it looks like to be a customer of ours.
Yeah.
And then you can say, what should it look like? Where do we have issues? And that's where you get into the how, and you can really start using some great innovation and ideation techniques to enhance the customer experience at different points of the journey. And what else can we do? Right? If we go back to that DVD example, okay, we've got a DVD in the back of the car. What else can we do to create peace and quiet for mom and dad during the travel? The DVD is one piece. What else could we do? Or what else can we enhance on the DVD player to ensure there's peace and quiet? And you can really get into some great innovation brainstorming now that you've mapped out your why, your who, and your what right in front of you.
Excellent. I mean, and also, like I've seen in some of the workshops that you do, that you also give people a very practical example of tools. I mean, you've just mentioned them, but I mean, you get really practical in the sense of how to build those personas, the journey maps, and then also going into ideation using certain different tools like our good friends from Traction Strategy with their cards, of course. We've done the videos and that and have them on the show. So there's quite a nice a journey to go on. But then also something you said is like, it might take some investment to use some of the tools here. And sometimes people like shy away from investing in them, right?
Yeah. Each of these things, I believe, require some intention, and they're not one-time things. The jobs that people are hiring your product or service to do could evolve over time. The segments of people that are buying your products or service could evolve over time. The journey that people have with your company can and should evolve over time. So it's not a one-time, let's just do this and now we're good. We've seen industries where people are creating roles around this is what we do and how we do it. And we're continuously looking at this and we're continuously getting better at it because we know people's habits change and technology changes and disruptors come along. And if we're not doing this on a continuous basis, we're putting ourselves in jeopardy of being disrupted ourselves.
Awesome. And then Dennis, there's another piece in the book, and hopefully I'm not catching you off guard here with this one, is that you speak about, on the one side there's customer experience, but then also you have to rely very heavily on your team to deliver that experience, right? Because they're the frontline people. And something interesting that you mentioned is that it's not necessarily about motivating them with money or rewards. It's also, it goes broader. If you can talk a little bit about that, because motivation, I think, is sometimes a very important thing, especially when you look inside your organization.
Yeah. There's been quite a few discussions on this, and I know there's TED Talks and there's books about this, but really, when you get into more problem-solving type skills, more critical and creative thinking, and that's what we're now asking our employees to do, because a lot of the manual and administrative work is now automated. There's systems for all that. So now we're asking people, use your brains more and be reactive and be creative and problem solve. So in order for people to do a really good job at that and be motivated at it, what we've found is that extrinsic motivators don't really work. Hey, we'll give you a raise, we'll give you a promotion, we'll give you a bonus. It sounds good, but in a lot of cases, studies have found it actually hinders the ability to be creative and problem solve, because now you've got this timeline, or you've got this raise, or you've got this bonus sitting in front of you and it's distracting you. What actually helps more is intrinsic motivators. How do we design a workplace that is going to really make it fun and enjoyable and challenging and rewarding in a good way, that is going to help you be more creative and be more available to problem solve and use your brain and really enjoy the projects that you're working on? So some companies have found really good ways of building intrinsic motivators into how they incentivize their employees, and you see a lot of those companies are the ones that are really taking off in their innovation.
So Dennis, as we head towards the end of our time together, the one thing that it's always difficult for me when I work with clients is like, where do you start? Like, like if you see, like when you go in and visit a company, what is kind of some of the first steps that you take to find problems, or like, how do you start with this?
That's a great question, and it was one that I was struggling with in the beginning. So what I did was I created a assessment tool. I call it the CCI assessment. CCI standing for Customer Centric Innovation. So where do you have issues? Where are you already doing okay? I could come in and do like an audit of your business, but that could take a long time. Why don't you self-assess your own company, or have all the leaders self-assess? So I came up with an assessment tool that asks all the questions that I would typically go in and try and audit, and you self-assess on a scale of 1 to 5. How well are you doing in all these different areas? And then it comes back with a score that says, oh, according to you and the 5 people on the leadership team, here's where you've scored your area low. So that assessment tool is free. I've got it on the Zero In website. Anybody can take it if they want to kind of self-assess how customer-centric and innovative is their business. You'll find it under the resources section on the Zero In website.
We'll definitely post a link to that in the updates and also in the captions when we post the show, because that's an interesting tool to have, right? And it gives you a good start and finding where the problems lie. The other thing that I wanted to, like, if you're willing to do this, right? Because we said we're not going to go too deep in the book, but the thing is, you spoke about CCI, like customer-centric innovation. but you have a beautiful, and if you don't mind, I want to bring it on screen. You have a beautiful matrix
Sure.
of showing where companies are. When I looked at it, it was like, really, okay, I can self-assess here and look at myself as an organization. I just want to see if I can do this, my trickery. This is like a quick one. I
All
think
right. There you go. You got
yeah,
it. Yeah. So I call this the Magic Quadrant, and really, you've got two vectors here. So on the horizontal axis, you got how customer centric is a company or your company. And
yeah,
on the vertical axis, it's how innovative is your company. So you got low ends and high ends. And really, this now splits companies into 4 quadrants. So where I like to get companies to the point of is in that top right-hand quadrant. You're equally customer-centric and innovative, and you've got tools and strategies in place to continue to get there. But if you're only innovative and you're not customer-centric, I call that the innovation for the sake of innovation quadrant, right?
yeah.
You're highly innovative, you're creating stuff, and you're flexible and you can pivot and you're agile, but you have no idea who your customers are, what they want, why they want stuff. So you're probably creating stuff that isn't adding a whole lot of value.
And
It's innovative,
there's a whole
but
bunch of companies that I know that's in that space, right? Like just
sure, sure.
innovation for innovation's sake.
Yeah. And they might get lucky and put out a product that people find cool for a while, but it's a fad. It's not a
Yeah,
long-term business model, right? So then you got the polar opposite of that. I call this the CS quadrant. This is when you're highly customer centric, but you're not innovative. So now you
yeah.
know your customers, you know them by name, you probably give a great customer service, it's engaging, it's personalized, but you do not have a culture of innovation. You do not invest in good practices and techniques and tools and strategies for piloting new things and discovering new ways of adding value for your customers. So this one's
And
a really dangerous quadrant because you get lulled into this belief of, hey, our customers love us. This is how we do it around here. We don't have to
yeah,
do anything different.
hyper focused on pleasing the customers, but then you kind of run out of steam to try and do the
Yeah.
innovation thing.
Yeah, no ability to pivot, not intentionally being proactive with new ideas. In fact, they're probably frowned upon in these companies because very, very low on the innovation scale, and they can sustain themselves and maybe even thrive for a long time until somebody comes along and disrupts their industry. And now, because they don't have this culture of innovation, they're playing catch up if they're lucky.
Awesome.
So then you have the bottom left. This
Don't
is
go
where
there. Don't go there.
exactly. You're not customer centric. You're not innovative. What are you? You're flying blind. I call this the FB quadrant or flat broke because who's buying what you're selling?
Makes sense. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that, Dennis. Let me just get my butt back on screen here because I really enjoyed this framework, and it's interesting when you're really honest with yourself and you start plotting yourself in this and go, or some of your clients, you go, but then also like when you do that, you can also see where there's opportunity, right? Because it's not about being negative. It's like, hey, I can rock into this place.
Yeah. And I
So
encourage my clients, hey, you're not going to get to that CCA quadrant overnight, and you're not going to get there and say, okay, we're done. It's a continuous thing where now what do you invest in? What new tools, what new strategies so that you're slowly moving further up into that quadrant of CCI and gradually getting better year over
yeah.
year.
So Dennis, before we loop in Tammy here, I want to ask you the question that I asked on the actual promo side. Can a business be disruption proof?
Yeah, great question, and that's one that I pose in the book as well. I don't know if there's an ironclad way to say there we're disruption proof, but I believe the best way to combat that is to implement as many tools and strategies to be as customer centric and innovative as possible. Now you're safeguarding yourself so that if something does come along, right, a pandemic, a disruptor, some sort of economic downturn, you know your customers, you've got a culture of innovation, you can pivot, you can test and try new things. It's not a guarantee that you're going to succeed, but boy, you're in a lot better place than you were if you're in any of those other 3 quadrants. So to me, that's what it takes to try and disruption proof your business.
Awesome. And Dennis, so just before we wrap this up, I just want you to maybe share with us where people can find you, because I think you appear in podcasts all over the place, you're doing webinars, but then also if you can riff a little bit on what people can expect and where they can find your course.
Sure. Yeah, so my website, www.zero-in.ca, is the home base for Zero In. There you can find all the different services, the book, and the online course that you mentioned. So the online course is a deeper dive into all the different aspects of the book. Strategies, tools, there's interviews with 8 different global experts. There's takeaway exercises that you can apply to your business to really help you as a business owner or leader do everything you can to get your company into that CCI quadrant. It's lifetime access to the videos and the exercises. So you purchase once and you can take the course, you can watch the videos as many times as you want. Maybe do it again a year later so that you refresh and learn some new things. But I think it's important that we're seeing this as a continuum, right? It's not a, hey, we've made it to the CCI quadrant. It's a, hey, we're constantly trying to make sure we're staying or growing in that CCI quadrant.
Continuous work, right? It doesn't.
Yeah.
There's no magic bullet for this or
Yeah.
potion. You just have to continue working, but you have to create an organization that can move, right? It's not, you can't sit
Yes.
still and being
Yeah.
bogged down in the wrong things.
Exactly.
Dennis, I've been looking forward to talking to you since I started doing these lives, and you're a gentleman, sir, and I really appreciate you being here on the show. And maybe at some stage I can twist your arm to come back again, maybe with 1 or 2 other guests to dive a little bit more deeper. I also appreciate the fact that you shared, I actually want to change the screen back to this one, that you've shared those practical aspects. These are a lot of the usual suspects, but you've kind of contextualized them in the who, the why, who, what, and how. And then also now you can see next to that the tools that come into play. Because I mean, I love to geek out about the tools, but I love the way that you actually like align them with certain aspects of this innovation, customer-centric innovation journey. So,
Well, I have to say I was pretty excited to be invited on. So I would love to come back if that's already an invitation. This was a great conversation. Loved it.
super. That's definitely an invite, and I definitely would love to have you back. And Dennis, thank you so much, sir. I mean, give you some time to go and have a good day. Hopefully, you will have the weather, of course, coffee, cheers. Also, the weather tomorrow to go work on that deck in the backyard there. But if your weather is like Polish weather, we'll have to see what happens tomorrow morning. Dennis,
Yeah.
thank you so much, sir, and I'll catch you again later. Thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.
Okay, everybody, that was Dennis. Now, in the next section, I'm going to invite my friend Tammy on to jump into the stream. Now, the thing is, I've never done a guest handover. So this is going to be the first time I do this. So hopefully it's going to work like a charm. So let's see how this goes when I press all the buttons. And I should bring Tammy on now. And there's Tammy. Tammy, can you talk so I can hear if your volume is on?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Let me just lift your volume a little bit on this side. If you can say beautiful things, talk a little bit.
I can say beautiful things.
Oh, there you go.
I
That's it.
loved your conversation with Dennis. There's so many key points I could jump all over, but I know we're here to talk about other things. I
just
did bring
moving
my
you.
coffee, though.
Yes. Oh, this is definitely the coffee thing. Doing that.
Absolutely.
So,
bring
Tammy,
my coffee. Yeah,
are you ready to rock and roll? We're going to do some
of course.
LinkedIn profile
Absolutely.
magic.
I'm ready to rock and roll. You
Okay,
betcha.
so let me just do the technical swap over. And then for everybody watching this is my dear friend Tammy Gulaloob. She's an executive and career coach. If you haven't seen her, watch my previous episode because she took over the whole show. And we ended up talking about bonsais, but then also how you find fulfilling work. Tammy, you're also author of an upcoming book.
Yes, I am. It's called Work from the Inside Out, Break Through the Obstacles, and Define a Career that Fulfills You. And
Nice.
Ironically, I have a podcast called Work from the Inside Out.
Look what I have. It's right there.
Oh, there's a photo of the younger Tammy. That's a picture of me about 10 years ago.
Looks good, Tammy. Looks good. You haven't changed a bit. I must be honest.
Oh, thank you, Werner.
But
You're so kind. What's in that mug you're drinking there?
vodka. It's Poland.
See, I knew
So,
it.
Tammy, I mean, I encourage people
Yeah,
to go check out this your podcast. I mean, beautiful conversations, especially with people who have kind of broken out the mold, who found the
yeah,
fulfillment that you always talk about. So,
yeah.
great show,
Like
and
people like you, right?
of course, I'm super
Yeah,
happy.
yeah. Well, you were one of you were one of my guests. We had a good time, right?
Very good time, like we
Yeah.
always do. Tammy, when
Yeah.
we get together, things happen. I mean, I
Well,
did come up.
just to offer a little segue also, I loved what Dennis was talking about intrinsic motivation, because he's so spot on with that in terms of what is it that makes us more fulfilled or feel more connected to the
Yeah,
work we're doing. And he's so right about that. I love that he talked about that intrinsic motivation, and that has to do both with how we feel about our work, but then also how we connect with our customers. So I was delighted to hear him talk about that
and
piece.
there's
I
a
mean,
definite connection
amongst all
between
the
your
other things.
happy employee and customer experience, and that's what I also like that he spoke about, because I think sometimes we forget about it, where you know um, happy employees will translate into satisfied customers. For me, like, there's a definite connection.
There is a very solid line connection between that. And I think that customers pick up on that. If you have an employee who's not happy or a little discontent, customers will pick up on that in a heartbeat.
Excellent.
So, and again, but it's on the employer, but it's also on the employee to take some responsibility for their happiness. It's not just on the employer to make you happy. It's also on the employee to figure out what is going to make them happy, and to be able to step into that or ask for that. It's not, I think too often we put all the whole onus on the boss or on the
Wow.
company to provide for, but I think it really should be more of a, what are we going to do together to make for a good work environment, a good work culture, and
So, yeah, it's so
provide
important.
a good experience for everybody. So
And it's kind of like this weird situation, or like insight that, a lot of my experience design friends, when you start looking and thinking about transformational experiences, it boils down to the fact that the only thing that you can really change in this world is yourself. It's really
that's
tough to
true.
change other people. I mean, of course, we want to work towards it. You have to make the effort, but in the end of the day, it's about how you assess yourself, how you adapt, and how you change. And I think that's especially true in your career, in your organization that you work.
Absolutely. There's really no other way to. I know it sounds so cliche, right? You can only change yourself. Oh, just be yourself. But actually, it's true. And the more authentic that you are, the more people will be drawn to you and will trust you. And so those
That's a good
elements
point.
make a huge, huge difference in terms of how effective you can be at your work or in the workplace, when people know that you're showing up as just real. It's not about showing up as perfect. It's about just being real. And when you do that, eh, great things can come out of that.
It's I just wanted to. I mean, we need to get into the review, but I wanted to hook onto
Yeah,
something you just said about the authenticity, right?
yeah,
Never thought of it in that way, because one of my previous employers, when I worked there, I came home and I was always super tired. And then at some stage, I started realizing I was so tired because I'm playing a role all the time. You're trying to live up to a persona or a character that you think your employer expects. And I think
that's
there's a
right.
lot to
Mm.
say for, if you can bring your authentic self, you might feel a little bit
Mhm.
more energized and perhaps not so tired at the end of the day.
Right, or it's a different kind of tired at the end of the day.
A
There's
good
nothing
one.
wrong with being tired at the end of the day, right? A good kind of tired, and it's not to say that when you go to work that you're going to be the same exact authentic self that you are at home. Of course, you're going to, be a little different at home than you are at work. There are certain standards of behavior or decorum in the workplace that are not going to be acceptable at work that would be at home. I think there are different, you're going to be a different Werner at home than you might be in the office. But I think that the difference when
Yeah,
you're really showing up and feeling like you're just having to be somebody, even to the point where you're somebody you don't even like anymore when you go to work. And most people know what that feels like, and they've had that
exactly.
experience. The key is to stop doing that and to either show up as your authentic self or go somewhere where you can.
And that is it, Tammy. We can spend another hour talking about that, right? But let's
Oh, we could spend more than an hour talking about that, right?
knowing us, yeah.
Yep, we
So
could.
definitely, it's always fun. So Tammy,
All right. Yeah.
um, we have our volunteer. Is actually a friend of mine, Irina,
Yeah.
and I've never actually asked her how to pronounce her surname, Alexiuk. She is, I think I did it spot on, to be honest.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you did.
Yeah, so she's from the Ukraine. She does a lot of work here in Poland. And usually, what we do is when someone like wants to review a profile, you also ask them what is the objective of their profile. And I think part of what Irina mentioned is that she is an entrepreneur. She does a
Mhm.
lot of things. She's ex-corporate lady, but she would love for her profile to turn into leads. People
Mhm.
inviting her to have a conversation, to perhaps
Mhm.
design some trainings for them, because that's one of the
Mm.
things that she's focusing on. So now I'm going to
Okay.
keep quiet and I'll hand over to you.
Okay. All right. So, but you shouldn't keep too well, you need to move you need to, yes, you need to
Yeah,
move things. Okay. So this is interesting what her banner is. What happens next? And I'm curious what's on the sides there because the
it's like
screen
yeah.
is
I can't.
kind of,
Let me. I can show you. Let me. Because I'm pulling all kinds of tricks. It's kind of a building.
oh, it looks like an atrium or an
Yeah,
elevator in a hotel or something. Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. All right. Just
Same on the
curious
other
what that's
side.
about.
Yeah.
So, if I was to look at that, I'd say, okay, well, what does happen next? And, I'd be curious about that. And she's a head organizer of TEDx in Warsaw. So anybody who's curious about TEDx would definitely want to get to know her. Um, but it's helpful for me to know up front that she wants to be known as somebody who can provide trainings. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So right now, I look at this and I say the only thing that I know from this, just looking at this, and let me say this about profiles, about LinkedIn profiles, like a newspaper, which many of us are not. Many people aren't reading newspapers in their hands anymore, but I think the same goes for even an on-screen profile. The top one third of page one, or as they say, above the fold, which would be the top half, is about as far as most people get before their attention gets diverted, unless they are super interested. And we're talking about the first maybe 8 to 10 seconds somebody's glancing at it. So, what do you want them to get when they first look at your profile? So what I see is she's the head organizer of TEDx. So the people who are going to want to talk to her if they first look at this are the people who want to get their foot in the door, or let's say their mouth in the door,
Mm-hmm.
to present at TEDx, right? There's nothing up here that says I am a provider of training programs. So the area right underneath the name, we call that the headline. I know we talked about this last time, but I'm probably going to be a little repetitive. So what I hear is that Irina, am I saying her name
Arena.
correctly?
Yeah. Perfect.
Irina wants to be found as a trainer. So one thing I would have her do is I would definitely have her leave her head organizer TEDx Warsaw up there because that's very noteworthy. But then I would also add under her name some of the areas of expertise that she has. What is the, definitely trainer or facilitator, whatever the words are that she wants to be found by. What does she do functionally that she would like to be found by? Because that area right underneath your name is so keyword sensitive. So if she wants to be found as a trainer, she needs to have those words there.
In there, yeah.
And if she trains people on particular topics, then she should definitely be putting those topical areas up there. So it could be trainer, it could be communication. She doesn't have to put communication skills necessarily, but communication or leadership, or it could be, let's say, I'm trying to think of, any other top. Maybe she teaches people project management, whatever her areas of expertise are.
Yeah.
So that's the key about the profile in that way, if she wants to be findable. And then I would say, everything else looks pretty good here. I'm not sure what the other pieces under here. Irina Olesiak, world building.
Not sure what
Is
that
that
is.
her
And then
business name? I've never
might be,
seen that line there before, that extra line. So that may be part of her headline. I don't know. But it's not drawing me into anything in particular. I think certainly having Warsaw there is important. You want to have people draw you into where, what local area you're in. So again, that headline area, very important. So let's scroll down. We can see that she's got some mutual connections.
yeah.
And it looks like she's got one of her webinars. That may be one of her webinars there.
This
then,
here, yeah, she's recently. So I happen to know she recently started a YouTube channel where she talks
excellent.
about training and training design.
Excellent. Okay. So then right underneath her name, it should say training design. But can you scroll up just a little bit? Because I think we missed some. There we go. The about section.
Let me open that up for you.
Yeah. Okay. So her about section also could be heavily keyword driven. So she can put in this area, so the first thing I see is through one-on-one leadership coaching, creating customized team training. So I see some things right away. Now, my first thing that catches my eye is that she does leadership coaching. It doesn't say training right away. It says it's second. So, she wants to make sure that if the thing she's really trying to catch people's attention on, put that first. And, I think the other thing that I suggest that people put in this section is something that not just talking about what she's done. So she's got a lot of information here about what she's done. I think it's also helpful to talk about what kind of impact she has. So, she does that a little bit with the TEDx here, and, talking about having a sold out event. She also talks about her degrees. We probably could find that out by scrolling further down. Don't scroll further down right now. But we don't need to have that there necessarily. I think, though, that what would be really cool is to have, I always tell people, come up with a good metaphor or an expression. Is there something that people say about you on a regular basis? For example, one of my clients likes to ask a lot of questions and unpack something. She likes to, not to challenge, but to explore things in greater detail. So people say to her, "Oh, you're always poking holes in things." So we put that into her narrative in her about section, that she pokes holes in things to get to a deeper place.
Interesting. It's like
So
characteristics
coming
of, yeah, like
right,
how people perceive you or see you. Of course, the positive stuff, but
exactly. Right. So what you're giving people is a little bit of a view of what are you like to work with. So what is it about you, Irina, that makes people want to work with you? Because there's a million trainers out there. There's a million people out there who call themselves leadership coaches. Um,
good
it's
point.
great that you work with leaders to build a rock star team, but what makes you the one who does that? What is it that you bring to that to make a rock star team, um, or to increase job satisfaction or to reduce turnover? That's great. Those are great results. But what is it that you bring to that equation? What would the people who you work with say about you? One way that I help people get to that information is I say, when someone has thanked you for doing something really well, what have they thanked you for? Can you remember something that someone thanked you for that left you feeling just so good deep in your soul, that you remember that person thanking you? What did they thank you for? Or again, what are those sort of repetitive things that people always, did you have a nickname at a certain job? Did people always call you something? And it can even be something a little silly. I've been known as the something or other, because I'm always the one who brings, the lightness when things get too stressful. Or
Yeah.
I had another client who, put in her profile, I bring order into the chaos. And, she went for a job interview, and that's the first thing the interviewer said to her was, I love this phrase. So those kinds of things really distinguish you from everybody else, and it makes somebody want to call you. So,
Right.
I think it's great to add some detail here about what you do, but it's more about who are you when you're doing those things and what makes you special about that.
Super. I mean, the thing is, I think one of the mistakes I've made on my profile before is that, and I've seen it also with some of my colleagues, where the about turns into a bit of an aspirational, purpose driven vision thing of like where you want to go. Like, is that
Mhm.
entirely wrong? Because I mean, I'm really like leaning towards what you're saying is like, it's kind of a snapshot of how it feels to engage with you. Like, I kind of, I'm leaning towards
Mhm.
what you're saying as a
Mhm.
approach rather than the I believe the world needs to be a better place kind of thing.
Well, I think it's fine to have those aspirational pieces, but combine it with what are you like to work with? Make people believe that you can actually make that happen. Otherwise they're just kind of empty words. Like, who wouldn't want to say, I believe in world peace? Well, that's great. you know that's great. But what is it about you or working with you that's going to, if I bring you onto my team, what are you going to contribute, or what energy, or what part of your strengths and personality will contribute to that effort? So,
Awesome.
um, I know I get a little glib sometimes, but I mean, there are things that we all believe in are good things to aspire to, but fill in the blanks a little bit more. And if you're not sure what to say, don't go it alone. Ask people who've worked with you. Ask people, I tell people, think of what someone's thanked you for, or ask people who've worked with you and say, okay, when you think about what I'm like to work with, what's one word that just automatically comes to mind? Don't ask people to go into a big long thesis about it, but just what are one or two words that you would say about what I'm like to work with? Now, hopefully they won't say annoying or
Grumpy
you're
cat.
impossible. Right, right, right. So there's ways to get at that information, and it shouldn't be too difficult. But those are the things that if somebody's going to even bother to open up your about section, you want that kind of information in there. Because if they want to know where you were educated, they're going to scroll down to look at your credentials. Um, they don't, I think that, for example, Arena's postgraduate studies in innovation management and design thinking is impressive. I might put something about innovation management and design thinking in her about section. I don't need that. I don't know that you need to say that you've completed those studies and what school. You can put that further down, but
Yeah.
you can certainly talk about that's part of her experience or her interests. So again, don't repeat a whole lot of things that sound like they're just coming right out of your resume
Yeah. And then
in that
another
in
thought,
this
yeah,
section.
because and another thought, like, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong here. I agree with you what you're saying about, but I wonder sometimes, and this is something, sometimes something you can be blind to, is that, I'm wondering if Irina's future customers that she's looking at actually understands what design thinking is. So maybe it's combining design thinking with that outcome. Like, what does design thinking help Irina do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, maybe explaining what it is a little bit, or what the outcome of that might be, or
Okay,
how that um, enables her clients to get to the next step or the next level, um, and how she trains them in that kind of thinking.
great.
Absolutely. So we could probably move along here, otherwise
There
I'll
you
start
go.
repeating myself. So
There's her.
great images always, she should definitely, I think people forget, these are fabulous.
Yeah.
So, I think people forget sometimes to import other content that they have into their LinkedIn profile. So that's great that she's done that.
Yeah, this is some
And
of the
she's got
podcasts I think
some
she was on. Yeah,
wonderful, wonderful, excellent. Yep, it's great.
good
All
stuff.
kinds of good information, different things that she's done, different places that she showed up. Um, and it's great. Let's see what else we got here. So then she's been
Activity.
active. So here's another thing. When you see what someone's activity is, you can see that she's commented on other people's posts, not just that or she shared somebody else's post.
Great.
So what some people tend to do on LinkedIn is they'll just like something, or they'll love it, they'll hit the little heart thing. And that's all very nice, but that doesn't really benefit anybody a whole lot. So she's done a really good job with commenting, and sharing things, and it's an extra level of interaction on LinkedIn, and that actually helps your visibility. So given that her visibility is important to her, it's really good that she's interactive in that way. And when you do comment on things, make sure that you are tagging people, either tagging the person whose post you're commenting on, or maybe you even tag somebody else who you want to make sure sees what you've commented on, to make sure that so that other people are included in the conversation. So that's great.
Excellent. And I actually, like, since your last episode, you actually mentioned this commenting thing as well. I gave it a run over the week where someone I haven't spoken to in a while posted something that I really enjoyed, left a comment, tagged him in, and now he wants to have a phone call to catch up, maybe some potential business. So there's benefit in that, not only the algorithm, but you can reconnect with someone or
Yep.
have a
Yeah,
good
it's
conversation.
amazing, huh? How one little, 2 minutes of your time making that gesture can reconnect you with somebody. And there you go. So you'll have to let me know,
I'll
what
send you
kind of
some
business.
commission.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, okay.
Okay, so let's see her experience. Okay, so here's another place where Irina can really um, call more attention to what she's been doing. Now, this can be more about what she's been doing and achieving versus emphasizing who she is as much. Although I always like people to emphasize who they are. So, and people tend to do this with the experience section. They think, oh, I don't need to put everything in my resume here, do I? Yes, you do. So, and in fact, the beauty of LinkedIn is you can even put in more than what's in your resume because you have lots of space here.
Exactly.
And, if people want to read it and look at it, they will. And if they don't, no harm done. At least it's there. So I would say that under each of these positions or roles that she has, she should definitely include some. I'm a fan of bullets. I know some people are tired of them, but I think they're much easier on the eye and easier for people to really
Yeah.
discern what is it that you've actually done. So, a series of bullets under each item. Each bullet should start with some kind of an action word. Don't say responsible for. Never,
Yeah.
ever. Well, people do it all the time. They think that's an action word, responsible for. It's not. So, come up with, use your thesaurus and put some detail in there about what you've done. She's looking to get some attention. Transformation catalyst. Not sure exactly what I see. Business coach.
Yeah.
I see nothing here specifically about training. Up above, she said leadership coaching, I think. So be consistent with your messaging and who you are and what you want people to know about you. So, I would definitely flesh out what does that mean, transformation catalyst? It sounds appealing, but as somebody who might want to hire her, I'd want to know what that means. I don't know that I would necessarily hire a transformation catalyst. I might hire a business coach.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people who are coaching come up with words like that because it gives you a flavor of what they're trying to do for you. But I'm more of a plain, straightforward type person.
Yeah.
It's like, all
I
right,
mean,
you're a business coach, and then put down what is it that you're trying to provide? What do you provide? Uh, Maybe you could talk about the kinds of clients you serve. Give yourself a niche, even if you don't have one right now. You need to carve one out because it's going to be very hard for people to decide whether you're the right coach for them. And people sometimes, especially when they have a fairly new coaching practice, and I can see that she's, really starting her coaching. She started her coaching practice about a year ago. So I think that when you're starting out, it's important to really have somewhat of a target market. You will still get other clients outside of that target market. Don't worry about being too narrow. Being narrow actually drives more traffic.
exactly.
So you need more detail underneath each of these positions. The
Yeah.
fact that you're head organizer of TEDx Warsaw has got to be a real feather in your cap. I think that's great.
She's done a good job. I've seen it.
Mm,
Yeah. The thing
yeah,
that
I
I also
bet.
wanted to add with the first one, because that is actually her business. That's her own entity. Her
Yeah, yeah,
as
I
a
get that.
and I like what you mentioned about actually doing a bit of a not in like a but a sales positioning. Like what is that you offering? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is
Well,
perfect.
it's a branding thing too. It's
Yeah.
really I think there's a need um for more, let's say a clarification of her brand
Yeah.
and
Tell
what
me
does
that
she provide.
the other thing I wanted to ask you, but I mean, you might not have an intrinsic opinion about this, but for example, I mean, for a lot of us here in Poland, when you start your own, when you go as a solo entrepreneur, you have to
Hmm.
open a business. You have to have I'm pretty sure it's everywhere the same kind of thing. You probably also you have
Hmm.
a consulting business, and then what
Hmm.
I did, but it's kind of pros and cons, is that I actually created a page for my business, and then I could add my business as a logo. So everything I'm doing under my own solo entrepreneur business is then listed here. For example, she's self-employed, but there isn't a real
Right.
business attached to it. But I guess also the problem is when you create a business page, you kind of feel that you have to also keep that up, put content there, or maintain that. That might be one of the reasons she hasn't done that.
Mm. Yeah, well, I probably have fallen prey to that as well myself. I have a business page and I haven't kept it up myself. But what I've done is really built my brand around my name anyway. So, I think that's a decision to make. How much time and effort do you have to do that? I think that, part of that depends on what is your ability and your agility with all of this to do. And so I think putting self-employed probably isn't necessary here. I think she could put I think it's clear that it's her company. So I don't know that she has to put self-employed. I don't live in Poland, so I don't know
Yeah.
what the norms are, but it's pretty clear that she's self-employed. So I think I just think there's a need here for her to continue to work on some clarification and
More
branding. And
detail.
maybe she has, it's just not right here. Clearly she's doing many things right. If she's running TEDx, you don't get to run a TEDx without doing a lot of things right. So I know that for sure. So and it looks like she's also doing some work with APT, which is also a
Yeah.
really good organization. So there's a lot of what we call social proof here. She's got a lot of good social proof, and there's a lot of good things to say here. I don't mean to sound
No.
critical as much as to say capitalize on those things. It
Leverage
won't
it. Yeah.
take much. It won't take much to fill all these things in. So it's all
Great.
good.
Then there's education after the
Yep, there's
experience.
all her education. The only other thing about education I tell people is, keep it simple. If you, if you wrote a thesis and it's relevant to something you're doing now, you might include, a big project or something that you've done. But other than that, that looks good. Volunteering, that's always a good thing to show. And what I love is that some of this she's done for a long time. So that's excellent, excellent, excellent. I love that. And I always tell people you have such an opportunity on LinkedIn to show other sides of yourself. So whereas on a resume, you run out of room and people say, oh, should I show my volunteer experience? And it's like, yes, tell people what kind of person you are. It's okay. You're not going to tell them you enjoy long walks on the beach. Not that. But if you've done some good work, and I would even say to her, if there's room under here, what is International Outreach Coalition? What is
Yeah.
Cactus?
What
I
is
don't
it?
know
Yeah.
what those things are. So I don't know. We all know what TEDx is, but it would be great to see a line about, well, what is it that she's actually involved with?
Good
Because I
point.
don't really know what those things are. So, and then she's got some really, really great skills and endorsements here. Really, quite a good number of
Yeah.
endorsements. That's great. Those also make you more findable. Again, under the category of being findable, those are good. And she's got some recommendations. Excellent, excellent.
Let's see
So
what
very
it says
good.
about all. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
one
those
thing
are
you
all good.
mentioned, yeah, what you mentioned before is that I'm just checking her. She doesn't have just a quick, because that's what you said last time. Is also try and get for your current positions, if
Yep.
possible. Recommendations.
Well, it looks like, and you can't tell by dates, because the one that she's got most recent looks like it's from somebody she worked with at Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
But again, you can always get new ones, and it's one of those things that's easy to forget to ask people for. And, but once you're an independent consultant or in business for yourself and you're providing a lot of individual services, you really want to up your recommendations because it's a whole different ball game at that point.
Correct.
So I
Correct.
think I have like 30 recommendations on my
I have to
site.
up my recommendation game.
Yeah. I don't know how many people pay attention to all of that, but I do think that it doesn't hurt the algorithm. So 6 languages.
Yeah,
Whoa. That's got to count for something. Excellent. Go
that's power.
Irina. Okay, here's another important thing. Irina's profile. She's got a nice, clean LinkedIn URL. Go Irina. Very good. Let's see what
Nice.
she's got for interests or groups. She's got her website. She's got her phone number. Wow. So would you hit see all under her contact information? I just want to see what she's got there.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's got her phone number. She's got her email address. She's got her Twitter and her birthday. So some of these things are very personal choices. I've noticed often that when I look in people's contact information, I rarely see a phone number or an email. Now, in her case, she may want that because she wants people to reach out and find her. Rarely do I see someone include their birthday, although some do. I think it's fine. Just don't put the year of your birth because that gets into, and she didn't, but that gets into, some real security issues. So go for it, Irina. And it's funny how so many people get so protective of themselves in this way. And I say, well, if you want to be found and you want to do business with people, they have to know how to reach you. So
good point.
Irina's making herself accessible here. Very good. All right. What else do we have here?
Interests.
We have her interests.
It's flipping over, but yeah.
Okay. And then
these are just people related to her experience. So
I see. Okay.
That's the end of that.
So is she in any groups? That's the other question I would have.
I just want to click over here.
Groups.
Because this one I can't actually bring across, but she's following some companies and some schools, but no, not groups.
Okay. She might be in groups. I'm wondering if we just can't see them right now or something. But I think that if she's not in groups, she should be. You can join up to 50 groups, and there's a couple of reasons that are good for that. One is that once you're in a group, you can interact in it, and it's a great way to get exposure. So if there's a particular industry or a particular group of people that she thinks might be good prospects for her, she might want to get into those groups and try to interact there. Another reason to get into a group is that once you're in a group with other people, it's easier to connect with those people and increase your number of connections. And it also, sometimes when people are checking you out, they'll see that you're in certain groups. They'll get a better feel for the kinds of things that you're interested in. So, Irina, you're good. You're good. You just have a few things you need to do. And if you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Tammy, thank you for doing this. And I want to say to anybody watching this, remember, we are building a list. Tammy's going to be back in the next stream to look at the next profile. So if you want it to be your profile, send either myself or Tammy a direct message, either on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you find us, and we might do it. If it's too good, I don't know, Tammy, do we want to see super awesome profiles?
Well, a super awesome profile could be interesting to look at too, because then we can have good examples for other people to follow. Nothing wrong with that.
We always assume that people have problems with the profiles. Maybe the pitch need to be, if you think your profile is so good.
Yeah. I mean, very rarely do people think anything is good about themselves. People are often self-critical. But, I think also sometimes you might have a really great profile for the work that you've been doing. But what if it is that your profile is really solid for a certain kind of work, and then you're saying, you know what, I'm ready to try doing a different kind of work. How do I shift my profile into another field or another industry? Well, that could be an interesting conversation
Yeah.
too.
Because you're kind of selling yourself, your own brand, setting your own brand up. It's important. And I think sometimes we forget in our careers that we need to fight for that. You need to grab onto bringing your own brand into the organization.
Yeah. And, LinkedIn is such a great opportunity to do that. I think the other thing we haven't done, which we might at some point, is then talk about if somebody is in that position of trying to make some kind of transition, what are the pieces of information that might be available to them on LinkedIn that would help them?
That could be
That's
interesting.
not
Tammy.
directly related to the profile, but it starts to tie in with the profile and how they are going to access that information and
Yeah.
become visible. So,
Just want to
but
say that acknowledge that Irina has watched. Thank you for the details,
oh,
time, and focus. This has been tremendously valuable.
our pleasure. My pleasure, Arena.
The check is in the mail, Irina. It's going to cost you one coffee.
I was going to say maybe I have to come to Warsaw and do a
I think
TEDx.
exactly, some free tickets to TEDx. Tammy, it's time to wrap this up. As much
All
as I'm
right.
having fun, and we are hanging out with the Marie Kondo of careers.
Oh, that was funny.
So hopefully, when Irina has done all the fixes, it'll spark joy and spark prospects.
Oh,
That is it,
love
spark
to spark
opportunities.
joy.
Yeah.
Let's spark joy. Yeah.
Tammy, thank you so much. I'll catch you on the flip side. I just want
Thank you,
to shut
Werner.
this
All
bad
right.
boy down.
All right.
Cool.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Have fun. There you have it. Tammy was back. Dennis was a legend. Come on, Dennis. And I want to thank both Dennis and Tammy for being on the live stream. I had so much fun. Also interesting to have two guests on a live stream for the first time. Hey, why not? Why not? So again, the sales pitch. Where's that side? Yeah, that is my Creative Coffee Break little page that I created. You can go over there, submit your details on the mailing list, because then I can tell you when I go live. I don't have to do 10 million posts on LinkedIn and everywhere else. I can just tell you when we go live and tell you what's going to be on the show, so you can discern and spend your time valuably. Because the other thing is also I get some cool people, so please jump in. But then also I'm getting super excited because we are heading into the weekend. It's time to take a little bit of a break, and I hope you're having fun and staying safe over there. And as always, catch you in the comments. Ciao!